Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We will begin the Wailele Flood Risk Management public meeting here in approximately 2 minutes. We appreciate your patience and look forward to the meeting. Thank you.
Hello.
Good evening. This is Jeff Herzog. We'll begin in approximately 1 minute. Thank you.
All participants are now in listen-only mode.
Now you're muted off.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Audio.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jeff Herzog, and I am the project manager for the Wailele Flood Risk Management study. And if you were present at the meeting just a little over a year ago, you remember I joined you out in Laie Elementary School, and unfortunately, I'm not able to join you out there in person tonight. And quite frankly, in this new normal of the COVID-19 world that we're living through, we're adapting and we're trying new things utilizing the technology that is at our fingertips. And so tonight, I come to you live via WebEx from AT&T if you're signed in, or I'm also coming to you live stream through YouTube. And so many thanks to my team for making this possible. And many thanks to the City and County of Honolulu, Mr. Dennis Toyama, who is our non-federal partner from the Department of Design and Construction. And to the Laie Community Association, thank you for your hospitality last year and your assistance and partnership throughout this entire last year as we updated the feasibility and our recommended plan based off of agency feedback from both the state and federal agencies, as well as from technical experts across the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And most importantly, in my opinion, is the feedback from the community up in Laie and across the area who are directly impacted by the flood and the risks that are associated with the flooding in Laie around BYUH, the Polynesian Culture Center, and those communities and those residences around there. So thank you for joining us tonight. And before we get too far, I'd like to offer an opportunity for my partner over at the City and County of Honolulu, Mr. Dennis Toyama. I see that he is on our WebEx. And so, Dennis, if you could *6 yourself, that'll give you an opportunity to unmute yourself. And then you can
in listen-only mode.
Forgive us every once in a while as people join in, which is a good sign because people are joining in. We're going to have to occasionally mute folks so that we don't get too much background noise. But Dennis, if you'd go ahead and hit *6 and then introduce yourself and the City and County of Honolulu and say a few words, sir. Dennis, are you able to transmit? Okay, well then let's go ahead and pass it up to Laie and see if the president of the Laie Community Association is online. I believe he's online. And sir, I'd like to give you an opportunity to say a few words and introduce yourself, sir. You may have to hit *6. So it does sound like we are having some growing pains. We'll get it figured out, and what we'll do is as we're going through, we will make sure that we provide an opportunity for our partners at the local levels to provide some words of wisdom and introduce themselves, because they have been a vital part of this project. And quite frankly, many of you have shown great patience. This study has been going on since 1999. And I am happy to stand here in front of you today and tell you that this project the study will be complete by September 30th of 2020. We've had a few delays due to the COVID-19, but we're pushing through and we will get it across the finish line because quite frankly, the community deserves it. And the flood risk reduction that this project will bring will benefit everybody up in the Laie community. So joining me tonight is my partner, is Mike Desolitz, and he is in charge of the archaeology and cultural resources. And he's been working with the Ship D and other Native Hawaiian and civic organizations in the Laie community to make sure that we do the appropriate coordination, but also the collaboration. That's the important piece, to make sure that when we move this project forward, that we do it in a responsible manner. So with that, if you're on the YouTube, you'll see me advance the slides right here. However, if you're on the WebEx, you may not see my face, but you're hopefully seeing the slides that are being presented. And so we have two moderators tonight, monitoring both the chat in YouTube as well as the chat in WebEx. So at any point in time, if you have a question or a comment, feel free to either chat in WebEx. You can chat to either moderator or to CA Cindy Akpal, or you can chat to everybody so that you can share your comment or concern or question with the entire audience. Feel free. We do ask, though, that if you'd like to make a verbal comment or if you'd like to ask a verbal question, we have specific breaks throughout the presentation when we will open that up. And on your WebEx, because that's how you'll be able to make your verbal comment is through the WebEx, there's a little, next to your name, there's a little hand icon. And if you could push that, it'll raise your hand so that we know that you'd like to make a verbal comment. And again, the way you unmute yourself is utilizing the *6 feature on your keypad. And again, when you're done speaking, we ask that you mute yourself again using that *6 function, so that way we don't have too much background noise. At any point in time, we do have folks controlling so that if somebody does hack in or perform some inappropriate chats or anything offensive, we will do our best. However, this is an open and public forum, and I think you all can appreciate the fact that we want to make sure that we have the widest participation possible to make this the most successful moving forward. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started with our agenda. Again, we just went through some introductions. My name is Jeff Herzog, and I am the project manager. I work here in Honolulu, and I also am a program manager. I manage the Alawai flood control program as well as emergency repairs throughout Oahu and the Big Island. And our area of responsibility is the entire Pacific. So not only Hawaii, but Guam, the CNMI, and we have a great team of professionals here that I'm proud to say that I'm a part of. So the study history, we'll go over that briefly, and then we'll go over the presentation of the final recommended plan. And then I'm going to specifically respond to some of the comments and the feedback that we received during our public review period. And then we'll address any new community concerns. And then I'll hand it off to Mike, and Mike will cover some cultural resources and some archaeology findings that he determined, and that he'll give you an idea of how we coordinate with the SHIP-D and other agencies in order to make sure that that not only are we Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act compliant, but that it's appropriately done and responsibly done with the community out there. And then we'll present the path forward, and then I'll go back to the City and County of Honolulu, to HRI and Laie Community Association up in Laie, and offer some opportunity for words of wisdom from them. Okay, so I mentioned it back in May, and I'm going to mention it again. The beautiful thing about the Wailele flood control study is that Congress has an authorization that when a project has a known need, an identified solution, whether it's engineering or non-engineering solution, they entrust it to the Corps of Engineers to be able to make decisions based off of that without having to go back to Congress. So this project is one of those types of projects where there's an obvious flood risk. There's definitely an economic benefit, and there's some definite alternatives to reducing that flood risk for the community. And so this project was authorized under that Section 205 of the Flood Control Act of 1948. And so once this study is complete, we will present our findings after October. We'll present our findings to our higher headquarters, and then we'll await funding and authorization from them to move forward into a design and implementation. I'm going to tell you up front that there is much more work to be done. This project is now concluding the feasibility phase. The intent of the feasibility phase is not to move straight into digging dirt and constructing a project. The feasibility phase is that Congress entrusted us to identify that there is an economic justification for this flood control project. Each and every one of you out in Laie knows that when you pay your flood insurance, or that when you go through a large storm event, you see the consequences, you see the damage. But an economic justification shows that there is a federal need or a return on investment, so that for every federal dollar that's spent, we gain at least $1 in benefits, whether it's through flood risk reduction, whether it's through maintenance reduction, whether it's through life, property, safety, or whether it's through flood insurance reduction opportunities. There's many opportunities, but it's demonstrating that return on investment. I'm proud to tell you that at the end of this study, we've made a determination that the economic justification, or that return on investment, is that for every $4, or I'm sorry, for every $1 that we spend on that flood risk reduction in the community of Laie, we get $4 in savings, whether it's through maintenance, whether it's through property, whether it's through emergency response and management, or whether it's through flood insurance. We've identified a $4 return on investment. And so that just shows how important flood risk reduction in the community of Laie truly is. But the other piece of that is there an environmentally acceptable way of addressing the flood concerns in Laie? And that's the other part that we justified, and we're wrapping that up right now through coordination with our partners at the Department of Aquatic Resources, the other areas at SHIP-D, DLNR, as well as U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services, and National Marine Fisheries. These are all the federal and non-federal agencies that we coordinate with to make sure that when we construct something, that it's NEPA compliant. The bottom line here, ladies and gentlemen, is that we want to deliver you a project that balances those engineering solutions with the impacts to the community and the impacts to the environment. We've done that, I believe, successfully tonight, and we'll demonstrate that. As I pointed out, there was initially signed an agreement with the city and county in 1999. And then in 2014, if you all recall, that's about the same time that the Marriott was constructed out there. But prior to the Marriott being constructed, they went through a master drainage plan update for the community of Laie. And that not only incorporated our project, but also incorporated some other projects, specifically back behind BYUH, a spine or a new berm to help keep the stream and the water into the Laie, or the Wailele stream. And so there were significant changes, and those significant changes were accepted, adopted, and incorporated into our plan. So what is the Wailele stream project area? So many of you are familiar that the Wailele stream, and I'm going to go ahead and turn on my pointer, so hopefully that you all can see it. It'll be easier if you're on the WebEx, but if you're on the YouTube, you should see a red dot. So here's your Wailele stream, and it travels through here. Here's BYUH to give you a little orientation. Many of you are familiar with the Polynesian Culture Center here. And then you have the Kamehameha Highway here at Highway 83 that goes through here. And then you have the Wailele stream that goes underneath the Kamehameha Highway, and then it comes out through the Tarl and Greg property here out to what we call the Muliwai. If you're not familiar with the Muliwai, then you're probably not from the area and you're just observing the meeting. But the Muliwai is that freshwater estuary where freshwater and ocean water converge. And then during a high storm event, that kind of blows out and does its natural thing and pushes out into the ocean. And then, so the Wailele stream shares the Muliwai with the Koloa stream here. This project specifically focused on the Wailele stream. The reason for that is because the bridge and that the Koloa stream goes under here along the Kamehameha Highway has ample capacity. So generally speaking, most of the flooding is not caused by the Koloa stream. It's generally caused by sheet flowing and overbanks of the Wailele stream. And that's because the actual capacity of the Wailele stream is very low. If you're familiar with the terminology, we call it cubic feet per second for the velocity. The Wailele stream can only actually handle 679 cubic feet per second of flow going through. During the 2008 and the 2011 storm events, there was an excess of 5,000 cubic feet per second flow. So that tells you how undersized the Wailele stream is. So how do you address that? Well, oh, I'm sorry. I forgot I had this slide. This is a zoomed in version. How do you address the undersize of your Wailele stream here, because what happens, it jumps the bank here as it makes the right turn. And then when it jumps this bank at this corner, it goes through BYUH. And on the next slide, it's a little bit more cluttered, but I'll show you a result of that flooding. It goes through the BYUH, and then it ends up finally, after it goes through the community and creates all that havoc, it goes out to the ocean after picking up all the rubbish and the brown water at the Foodland Culvert. But then you have a second problem. And that second problem is this. Let me move on to my next slide. The second problem is that what water does make it past that bend comes down here to the Kamehameha Highway, to that undersized culvert. Again, 679 CFS. So it's probably a 6 to 8 foot culvert that's 6 to 8 feet wide. Might even be smaller if I remember correctly. But the fact of the matter is it's significantly undersized. So what happens is the water hits there and it wants to sheet flow over, but it can't, because the Kamehameha Highway, it acts as a lip of a dish. If you're familiar, if you're eating dinner, because I've interrupted your dinner, you're familiar with the plate. The bottom is nice and flat. That's where you put your food. And then there's typically just this small little lip, nothing significant, because then we call it a bowl, but just a small little lip, and it catches your drippings to make sure that it doesn't end up in your lap as you're eating your dinner. The same thing is what the Kamehameha Highway serves as. The water hits that, and it travels down that lip, and it picks up all that rubbish as it travels through the Polynesian Culture Center, through McDonald's, through the Marriott, and it finally makes its way and joins up with the water that jumped up here. And this is what you see. This picture here, and if you're on the YouTube, I understand it's difficult for you to see, but this is from the 2011 floods. And you can see that people here are up to their thighs, up to their waist. It's up to the top of the tires on this old, it looks like maybe it's a Buick Skylark. Great car, I had one. And then it travels through and it finally exits at that Foodland Culvert. So how do we fix this? How do we address this? Well, I'm going to be honest with you. You'll hear me refer to flood risk reduction. You all live in an area that's threatened not only by the riverine flooding coming down the mountain, but you have the coastal flooding, you have the high tides, you have sea level rise, you have an issue with water. This project is a piece of the puzzle to reduce the risk. It is not the holistic solution that's going to keep you from seeing any water on the streets during a heavy storm. So how do we reduce that risk? Well, the bottom line is that was our study objective. Decrease the risk of inundation along the Wailele stream and the associated risk of the inundation to the community over a 50-year period of analysis. You'll hear a lot of people talk to you about the 50-year period of analysis, or a project's 50-year lifetime. That's only because we have to evaluate the economic return on investment. The economic return on investment extends out to 50 years. So if you hear somebody talk about the 50-year project life, they're not referring to that in 50 years your project's not going to be any good. All right. There's the Kahawai stream project that was constructed in the 80s. And my understanding is it's still executing as designed and as constructed quite well. And if you look across the island of Oahu, as well as the rest of the state or across the nation, our flood control projects from the Corps of Engineers are, when maintained properly, function as designed for much longer than 50 years. But how do you reduce that risk? What you see on this map is all this blue and all this red. That blue means that the water is deeper than 3 feet. Where you see the red, that means the water is deeper, it's between 2 and 3 feet deep. Where you see the yellow, it's between 1 and 2 feet. Where you see the green is where we want it to be. The green is that stormwater runoff. It's that, okay, it's raining outside, it's an impervious surface, because that's what we did for so many years. We constructed concrete and parking lots. That's what the green is. We want as much green and occasional yellow as we can. So we need to address the blue. And as I stated in my last slide, the blue is from right here. You see where it breaks through here and it breaks out of the stream here. It goes through this here where I'm circling is your BYUH. Down here where you see it looks like a crater, that's actually a parking lot for the Polynesian Culture Center. And you see how the water travels through here. And you see where it breaks out of the banks down here and it travels down through here. And then it finally breaks itself back out up here. A 1% ACE, annual chance of exceedance. To put it simply, 1% ACE, I want you to think about it like this. There's a 100% chance that something's going to happen. This is a 1% out of that 100% that you're going to have this such low probability, but catastrophic damages, risks to life, safety, and property. That's on your right. But it's not just that 1% that we want to protect against. Because like I said, it's about balancing flood risk reduction with impacts to the community and impacts to nature. So I want you to see what the same event looks like at that 10%. So 10% of the time, that 10-year event, that's quite frequent. You probably see it 3 to 4 times a year easily. It's still breaking out. It still comes through, and you still have all of this blue and red. This blue and red is what creates risk to life, safety, and property. Now let's look at with our final recommended plan. With our final recommended plan, you see that we have an overflow channel here that goes through some agricultural property. It's owned by HRI. And then it travels through 3 new culverts that are 12 feet wide and 8 feet tall right next to each other that will travel under the state-owned Kamehameha Highway. And then they will meet back up under the highway into the Wailele stream. And then it'll go out to the Muliwai and then blow out. But I want to show you here again where you see the Koloa stream here coming down and going through under the bridge. Now, you'll see this flooding right here. But as the stream blows out here, that's where that flooding will be reduced here. So this here, what you see, and it's easier to see on this one over here, where my red laser is, that's that new feature that I mentioned is going to be constructed by the non-federal partners as part of their drainage master plan. And we're calling that the BYU spine or the non-federal betterment or the levee that's going to be constructed there. And so what that's going to do is that keeps all that water from going through and leaving the channel. And then an even smaller event, you see it keeps all that water from breaking out and going out here. And so what you see during your 10-year, you see it 3 or 4 times a year out here, you see a significant difference between that and this, where you have all this blue and red and you have this blue and red. Now, like I said before, this is not the holistic, perfect, end-all, be-all solution. This is a piece of the puzzle to flood control and flood risk reduction in the Laie community. So by constructing our project, it then provides the opportunity for the city and county and for the community of Laie to then put smaller measures in. By smaller measures, I'm talking about rain gardens. I'm talking about swales. If you remember Laie before, when the McDonald's was constructed or when the Marriott was constructed, you see those grassy patches between the parking lot and between the access roads, and they tend to be 3 to 4 feet deep. Those serve as swales so that as the water goes in there, it hits that instead of impervious surface, and it provides a nice pool for it to percolate down into the ground and reduce that flood risk. So that's why throughout this area, it's much newer, you'll see a lot less pooling, and so the water's shallower. This area here where you see kind of businesses and a lot of impervious surfaces, then you see that it does tend to pool up a little bit more because it's a lot more challenging for it to percolate.
Like all participants are now in listen-only mode.
And I have seen some questions come up. We'll get to those in just a second. Thank you. Okay, so this is your side-by-side comparison of that mega event, that 1%, catastrophic damages, low probability. But if you're familiar with the island of Oahu or familiar with the state of Hawaii, April 17, 2018, Hawaii Kai, which is just on the other side of the Ko'olau Mountains from you all, Kuli'o'o Valley, the Wailupe Valley, and the Hahaioni Valley had one of these types of events, caused thousands and thousands of dollars in damages, and they had flood control projects in place. So with climate change, without discussing what the cause is, nobody can argue the fact that there are definitely environmental and impacts to the community based off of changes in the climate and the environment. And then this area over here is what your new future with project conditions will look like. Now, we looked at several different options, ladies and gentlemen, and what we made the determination of is that the most economically justifiable for the community and for the city and county to be able to maintain, as well as the most environmentally acceptable solution, was to manage the water, to get the water out of the system as quickly as possible. The existing stream doesn't have the capacity, so we needed to be able to create the capacity. There wasn't space to create the capacity in the existing stream. And so working with the community of Laie, working with HRI, and working with the city and county, we came up with the recommendation to construct this overflow channel through here. And this is specifically what Mike's going to focus his briefing on tonight when he talks about archaeological and cultural impacts. But previously to that, we talked about, well, what if we create some detention basins, much larger than what you see between McDonald's and the Marriott, but these larger detention basins that would capture the water and then slow it down so it didn't overwhelm the Kamehameha Highway and so that it didn't overwhelm the banks up where it makes that right turn up by BYUH. The maintenance cost, as well as the risk associated with them, and the fact that they just aren't as environmentally acceptable, eliminated those, and we came up with what we call a full conveyance alternative. Okay, so I'm at a point now where I'm going to go over some public review and community concerns, but prior to doing that, I do want to give an opportunity to address some of the questions that have come up over the first part. Okay, I just found, I heard from Dennis Toyama at the city and county. So while we're gathering our questions, I'm going to turn it over to Dennis and allow him to say a few words. And then when I come back, I'll address some of the questions I heard. I saw some questions about FEMA, about flood elevations and what happens next, and absolutely great questions, and we'll take those in turn. So Dennis, if you'd like to say a few words, sir, and then I'll take it back over. You should need to hit *6 though, so that you can speak.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I hear you now.
Okay, finally.
Okay.
Sorry about that, guys.
Where are the questions?
I just had a little problem.
I don't see the questions.
Yeah, the city and county. I'm from the city and county Department of Design and Construction. I'm the project manager for this project. We've been a local sponsor for this project from the very start, and we've been in a partnership with HRI. Been working with Jeff Dial, Eric Beavers quite a bit on this project, and yeah, we're looking forward to completing the feasibility study. And just want to thank Jeff for a great presentation so far. Not sure if anyone had any questions.
Well, yeah, Dennis, we're gonna we've got some questions. Some folks have been sending me some questions and some chats. But while I'm accessing those, Jeff, are you or is the Laie Community Association president able to? Is Jeff Taiu or the Laie Community Association president able to speak?
This is Jeff. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I can, Jeff. Yeah, if you'd like to say a few words.
Yes. So yeah, this is Jeff Young with Hawaii Reserves Incorporated. We have appreciated the Corps and the city and county of Honolulu for all of their hard work on this project. I mean, we have had extensive flooding in the community over the years. And we understand what Jeff Herzog is saying, that this is not the 100% solution because that's not what we can do with Wailele. But Wailele is the major portion of the flood, cause of flooding in Laie. If we can solve Wailele, then we can work on other things for the water that falls on the ground in Laie. But Wailele brings mountain water into Laie that causes the flooding. And so we are very supportive and appreciative of all the work that has been done so far. Paninga Tonga, the Laie Community Association president, he texted me that he got delayed by some family business, but he's trying to join now, and then he can make some comments. But the Laie Community Association has been part of the design process with the city and county and the Corps from early on. And I don't know if there's anybody else from the Laie Community Association online that would like to comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff, for those words. Is there anybody from the Laie Community Association on? No problem. We will have ample time at the end to make sure that we get words of wisdom from the folks who have lived this on a daily basis. And so thank you for those words, Jeff, and thank you to you and Dennis for being supportive of this. And certainly with Dennis and the city and county of Honolulu, they have their hands full right now. My hat's off to them for the way they're handling the COVID-19 and the pandemic. And it has absolutely been amazing and astonishing to see the leadership and the work that has been gone through for the city and county employees as well as the first responders. So hats off, and we appreciate what you do for us. Okay, so I have 3 questions, and really I can compile them in because it's related to flood elevations as well as FEMA, as well as, and this is somebody who pays his flood insurance because he's very educated. And so I can appreciate questions like this. And so what I can tell you is the effective elevation change in flooding is going to be different for depending as to what area you're in. And so I'm going to go back in a slide. I hope. Okay, here we go. Okay, so here is your existing conditions. This is what you're currently paying your flood insurance on. Now, what I will tell you is, having done a little bit of research, but not living out in the Laie community or up along the North Shore, you all pay flood insurance also based off of the coastal flooding threat, not just the riverine flooding threat. So what I can tell you is we are absolutely impacting in a positive way the flood elevations of the water caused by riverine flooding. However, what's going to happen is after this project is constructed, the city and county of Honolulu will work with FEMA to redo the firms maps. There's 2 options for FEMA. And many times what they do is they come to the Corps of Engineers and they take our study and they adopt that. Another option for them is through an interagency and inter-service agreement with the Corps of Engineers. They can have us update their firms maps for them. But what I will tell you is that will not occur until the project is constructed. And then even still, what we will not guarantee, what we say there is an opportunity for, is for some of you to have a reduction in flood risk, which directly equals to money back in your pocket through a reduction in flood insurance. However, that's a few years away. And that's a lot more coordination with our federal partners, as well as the city and county of Honolulu. But that is absolutely an opportunity that we are seeking and that we hope we can help the community come to fruition with. Are there any other questions? Is there anybody on the phone who has a question? What I'd ask you to do is if maybe you weren't able to use the raise hand function, go ahead and *6, introduce yourself, and then ask your question, and understand that there is typically a 3 to 4 second delay between when you speak and when we receive, and then there'll be an even longer delay for the folks on the YouTube channel. So I'm going to go ahead and pause for 10 to 15 seconds and allow if there's anybody on the phone who may have a question that they'd like to verbalize. Awesome. Hearing none, what I'm going to do at this point is we're going to go and talk directly to some of the comments, because hats off to you folks. This is the second time in a year that I've held a meeting, and many of you have taken time out of your busy schedules to join me. And at the May 6th, 2019 meeting, we had over 70 people show up in Laie Community Association, and you got to grill me face to face. I have a little bit of a buffer here, but I do actually wish I was with you guys in person out in Laie. So some of the comments that we received, what are the impacts Makai? If you're not familiar with the term Makai, that means the ocean side of the Kamehameha Highway. So what we're saying is we're going to create, and I'm actually going to go back a slide so that we're going to create this overflow channel over here. So what happens when this water goes under and into the Muliwai and into the existing channel? Because if you look, it's awfully blue right here. And if your last name is Tarl or your last name is Greg, if your last name is Tarl, that family lives right here. Their house is within 50 feet of where that water is going to be going underneath the Kamehameha Highway. And then for the Greg family, they're over here, and they've already experienced on their property, not their home, but on their property, where they see the water that backs up from these 2008 and 2011 storms. So what's going to happen when the water comes through here to their properties and to their homes? Because it's illegal, immoral, and unethical for me to increase risk on them so that I can protect you folks over here. We have to do something to address that. So what I can tell you is at the beginning of this briefing, I told you that this is a feasibility study. We have to identify that it's economically feasible, and we have to identify that it's environmentally acceptable. That doesn't mean that as soon as we get approval, we're going to go out and break ground and start constructing culverts. And there's a lot more of the design that needs to happen. Now, some of the options are if you increase some meanders in this overflow channel through that property, well, then you're creating environmental habitat. You're creating opportunities to attenuate the flows so that as it meanders through, it comes under the highway and it exits out and joins up with the old stream, and it's already moving in the right direction. Other options would be to increase the elevation of Mr. Greg's property over here. Again, we've had preliminary discussions, but until we move into the design phase and sit down with him and look at our modeling and advance the project on the Makai side, we don't know exactly what it's going to look like. But what I will tell you is between the left and the right banks, that is the right banks being the Tarl home and the homes that are along here, and the Gregg property and the family over here on this side, it is absolutely our intent to take the water from here, get it out to the Muliwai, and blow it out on these high events out there. Now, impacts to nearshore marine environment may be some of your concerns. But what I will tell you is we did an evaluation. The environmental impacts of the water blowing out, as it does now naturally here, is much less impactful when it exits out at Pounders right here than when it travels through BYUH, through Laie, out through the Safeway, Foodland, I'm sorry, I keep calling it Safeway. It's actually Foodland. But through that shopping mall center out here, and then it finally exits out through that box culvert that's there. But if you have all that water going through there, that also causes backwater from what's supposed to naturally be flowing out there. So this actually is a more environmentally acceptable solution than the existing condition that it has. So that's kind of what the next step is for those properties and those families that live Makai. It's not that we forgot about them. It's that we understand that once we get this approved and advance the design, the numbers and the modeling will make a lot more sense so that we can come up with a hard solution to this issue of intersecting back up with the Wailele stream. So the next comment that we received, what about the impacts to the Kaloa residential community? Now, Many of you, when we came out in May, and then we did a follow-on visit and met with some of you out there, the concern is the maintenance, the how bush, the Christmas tree bushes and the berries that are in the stream and they're blocking the stream. What I will tell you is Director Ross Sassamer, he's the director of the facilities maintenance for the city and county of Honolulu. And hats off to him and his staff, because just this last year, working with our regulatory division, who's not part of my office, but they are close enough where I can throw a rock and hit their window if you need me to. That was a joke, please. But they worked hard to get a Oahu-wide stream maintenance permit, so that what you have to understand, in order to maintain these streams, they need to be able to access the streams. That causes two problems. Number one, if it's on a private property of a homeowner, that homeowner owns the stream. So the city and county now has to coordinate with that landowner in order to get a right of entry and access to get a contractor in there to be able to do that stream maintenance. It's not something that happens overnight, and it does take time. The other issue that it presents is that it takes time to get those individual stream permits in order to get in there. So now, having that stream-wide maintenance permit, they now have the one piece of that puzzle in order to be able to better maintain these streams. So hats off to Director Sessemer and his team. The other piece that I'll tell you about, and maybe some of you are familiar with the politics locally, is that they're working on what's called a stormwater utility fee. And my understanding is that the intent behind a stormwater utility fee is not to tax people who don't get flooded so that they can pay for the people who do get flooded, but it's to overall help reduce the burden on the taxpayers, because if a community in Laie or Honolulu or Waikiki floods, that has impacts across the entire economy, not just on that area. So the city and county is working on that stormwater utility fee to help pay for some of this maintenance and some of these. So I will tell you that your concerns were heard and the message was passed, and that they are working now. But as I said, the capacity here at specific to the Kaloa stream at the Kamehameha Highway, there is ample capacity for it to go through. And there will remain ample capacity for it to go through when we add that water through here in the Muliwai. Currently, there's 7,000 CFS coming down the Kaloa. There's going to be about 6,000 CFS coming down. So that means when all of it converges here, it will all blow out, and that this will continue to push out as well. You won't see that backwater effect. Now, we will confirm that when we move into the design phase, which is the next phase. And if we do see that there is some backwater impacts, then we will absolutely mitigate for it, whether it's increasing stream capacity right there at the mouth, or whether it's creating some sort of barrier, whether it's a small berm or a small levee that blocks it off to make sure it closes off the system. So I don't want you to think it's a closed book and that the folks in Kaloa, we're going to transfer risk from Laie and the Wailele community over to you just because you live on a different stream outside the study area. Impacts to the Polynesian Culture Center. Again, we kind of discussed that lip of the dish. So what you will see here is, this is your parking lot here of the Polynesian Culture Center, and it absolutely does have water in it. So by constructing this project, as we move forward and we get final kind of numbers as to what that inundation looks like, if we are inducing risk, then we will have to mitigate that risk. It could be that within there you see planters, and those planters could serve as rain gardens, or maybe it's as simple as creating some more curb and gutter system drainage opportunities. But in the feasibility phase, the numbers are so rough that we don't exactly know what the right answer is. So we will absolutely have to address that. And I know that's a concern, and it should continue to be a concern as we move forward. And I appreciate the collaboration and the coordination with the Polynesian Culture Center. What about maintenance of the project? I actually, I cheated. I went to the end of the book on this one. I apologize, but I just talked about Director Sasamura. When we are done with this project, we're going to hand it over to the City and County of Honolulu. Now, whether they work out a service agreement with the Laie Community Association or whether they do the maintenance themselves through the Department of Facilities Maintenance, that's for them and for them to negotiate and determine and decide. We, as the Corps of Engineers, are going to hand the project over to them, and they're going to be responsible for that maintenance. But that's not that we are abandoning the project, because what's going to happen is at least annually, we're going to go out and we're going to inspect the project. And then we're going to provide a copy of that inspection report to the City and County of Honolulu and to the non-federal sponsor. That will provide them an opportunity to go in and make sure that the project throughout the year operates as designed and as intended. If they maintain it as they are supposed to, if there is an event and if there is damage to the project, the federal government will come in at full 100% federal expense and repair that project under the Public Law 8499 Rehabilitation Program. We just completed a project in Hawaii Kai with the City and County of Honolulu in the Haione Valley, where that exact thing happened. In that April 2018 event, it was damaged. We came in and we assisted them in the repairs of that. And so the Corps of Engineers is not abandoning the project and putting the full burden on the City and County of Honolulu and Laie Community Association. However, the operations and maintenance and repairs are, generally speaking, a non-federal responsibility. Will there be a pedestrian crossing over the box culverts? I'm going to combine this with another question that I received, two other questions. Are they going to put a bike path alongside of it? Are they going to keep it so that there's water constantly flowing through it to keep the homeless from living in it? What I can tell you is there's approximately going to be a new 36-foot wide, what we call culvert system. Many of you will refer to it as a bridge, a new bridge over the Wailele stream overflow channel. What exactly that looks like right now is yet to be determined. I can tell you how big my culverts need to be, but whether or not a maintenance easement for inspection purposes can then be hardened and turned into a pedestrian pathway, to be determined. It's too early. Whether or not we're going to put grates on those culverts to keep the homeless from living in there, it's too early. It's to be determined. What I will tell you is that we will do an environmental assessment and we will do a risk assessment on those culverts and on that final system to determine what is the appropriate way to ensure that the public safety is at the forefront when this project is completed. What will this do to flood insurance? With the gentleman who asked the question earlier, I again jumped to the end of the book on it, but it will provide the opportunity for many of you to have a reduction in flood insurance. I will tell you though, not many places in the nation is the entire city area flood zone AE. That is the case in Laie. So whether your threat is from riverine flooding from the Koloa or the Wailele, or whether it's from the coastal flooding coming off of the Pounders Beach Park, that's to be determined, and that'll be worked out with FEMA after the project is construction. And then, of course, we discussed how will the Koloa stream be affected. So what I'm going to do now is I've gotten an opportunity to run my mouth for quite a while, almost an hour. I want to provide one more opportunity before I turn it over to my partner for the community to provide additional concerns or ask additional questions. And then what I will do is I will hand it off and we will have a discussion on cultural resources. And then I'll come back up and we'll have kind of a closing opportunity for questions, concerns, or comments. So I'm going to pause now and look at my screen and look at my moderators and see if we have any new questions. Okay, so I see a question. What will happen to Pounders Beach and the surf break? Was there any study done on the effects to the beach and the surf break? Okay, so I never knew why it was called Pounders Beach Park until I went out there. Eric Beavers did explain it to me. He explained it to me that he's got many bruises permanently because of Pounders Beach Park. But going out there, it's a beautiful beach park. And the Muliwai, as it stands right now, is naturally supposed to blow out during these heavy storm events. You may have seen it during heavy rain events, or whether it's maybe it's a king tide, or whether it's a large swell coming in. It comes in and then it pulls it back out. And then over time, the Muliwai fills back up from the Wailele stream and from the Koloa stream. So that's what it's going to continue to do. And again, it will have near-term brownwater impacts, but really no more than what it already has. Like I said, the Koloa stream coming down already provides close to 7,000 cubic feet per second velocity as it goes under that bridge and out to the Muliwai. So it's already being blown out. So we do not anticipate at this point any new destruction to Pounders Beach. However, erosion and sea level rise along the entire North Shore and along actually in the entire state of Hawaii is something that your coastal zone managers, coastal state planners, your city and county of Honolulu Office of Climate Change, Sustainability and Resilience, we are all taking it very seriously. However, under this particular study, we did not specifically look at beach erosion to Pounders Beach Park. I hope that answered your question. Will sewage spillage from the wastewater treatment plant be able to flow into the new channel above BYU or the stream at all? Now, this sounds like a dangerous question, because I'm not sure if the individual is making the comment that there's currently sewage spillage going into the existing stream, or their concern is that you will have wastewater treatment plant sewage spillage with the new either the BYU spine or with the Wailele stream. And the intent right now is not to create any sewage lagoon or opportunity for raw waste to be dumped into the Wailele stream, because that would have an adverse impact on the existing fish habitat and ecosystem that currently resides in. All right, Mr. Tarl, I understand you raised your hand. Give me just one quick second. I'm gonna answer this question about the proposed cost, because it's a great question, because ultimately the federal government's not going to pay 100% of the project cost. So you as taxpayers in the city and county of Honolulu absolutely deserve to know what is the project cost. So we enter this project in the feasibility study as a 50-50 cost share. For every dollar put in by the federal government, $1 is put in by the non-federal sponsor. However, for the design and construction phase, which is another reason why it's advantageous for both the federal government and for the community to get it economically and environmentally justified in feasibility, but then do the real legwork and the research in design, is because in design and construction, the cost share between the federal government and the non-federal partner is 65% of the cost is bared and borne by the federal government. 35% of the cost is borne and bared by the non-federal partner. So that's the cost share allocation. That's his question two. And then his question one is, we're anticipating construction costs over a 1-year period of construction and a 1-year period of design. We're anticipating at or about $12 million. That seems like it's a lot of money, but what I will tell you is the construction costs here in the state of Hawaii, and with the inflation and the cost of materials to excavate and then to build back up with the limestone and the fill, it's not cheap. What would normally cost $3 or $4 million on the mainland costs $12 million here in the state of Hawaii. So that's the cost breakdown. Now, Mr. Tarl, I do see your question, sir, but I want to give you an opportunity to speak directly. If you'd like to *6 yourself, I'll mute myself, and that way you can ask your question, because I do understand I've said your name and your family's name a few times. So please feel free to ask your question verbally, sir. Mr. Charles, are you able to speak? Okay. No worries, hearing nothing. The question he specifically asked was, when will the design work for the Wailele stream Makai of the culvert be completed? Will you provide the results of the simulation with the new design to the public? Absolutely. So best case scenario, and I'm jumping to the end here, I understand that, but best case scenario is the end of the start of the new federal fiscal year is October 1st. So best case scenario is we're going to finish this study and then we're going to present it to our higher headquarters. And then our higher headquarters is going to rack and stack it nationwide based off of its return of investment to the federal government. Is that the most appropriate way to do it? No, but it is effective because then they have to, there's these projects nationwide. What I will tell you and what you can be confident of, when you have a $4 return on investment for every federal dollar spent, that competes very well on a national level. So then what we're going to do is we're going to be told, please go forward, find a non-federal sponsor, negotiate an agreement for design and construction, and then come back when you have a funding plan and when you have a viable non-federal sponsor. So typically speaking, that could go anywhere between 4 months and a year. Then we're talking about negotiating and executing the PPA and getting the funding. Anywhere from 2 months to 6 months. And then we're going to execute the design. Like I said, 1 year design and then 1 year of construction. But during that design phase, specifically for you and your family and for the Gregg family, Makai side, we absolutely have to come down, coordinate, collaborate, and work with you all to make sure that we do not induce or increase risk upon you. Because like I said, it's unethical, illegal, and immoral. And that's just not the way we operate here at the Corps of Engineers. So to answer your question, specifically to your property, it could be anywhere from a year from now to a little bit longer. And for that, I apologize, but unfortunately, I don't get to control the processes or the timeline. What I will tell you is you have a very strong project and you have a very active delegation that fights hard for you in order to make sure that you get the projects you need to reduce that risk to public safety. And then will you provide the results of the simulation with the new design to the public? Absolutely. And I understand that it's been about a year since you all have heard from me, but that's because we've been doing a lot of coordination between federal agencies, non-federal agencies, as well as the folks who commented. And I want you to know that similar to I did either in May or I'm doing tonight, we will have another one of these meetings when we get approved to kick off the design so that you know we're spinning back up to get started. And then as we progress through and we finalize what that design is going to look like, with community input, by the way, we will present it again right before we move forward with getting construction contracts out there, because it directly impacts each and every one of you out in the Laie community. All right. Has this project already been approved by Congress? In some sorts, yes. Because Congress approves a certain pot of money under that CAP 205 pot of money. And so because we have a viable sponsor, because we have a justifiable problem of flood risk in the Laie community, and because we found an environmental and an economical path forward, this project does not have to go back to Congress for authorization for design and construction. It has to compete within the Corps of Engineers nationwide inventory. And that's where I say you have a very good competing return on investment. That is, every $1 federal, you get $4 return on investment. All right. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for your questions. What I'm going to do for the next few minutes is I'm going to turn it over to Mike Desilets, and he is going to provide you an overview of the cultural resources and archaeological coordination collaboration that he's done with the state historic preservation. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate the intro. As Jeff said, my name's Mike Desilets, and I'm an archaeologist and with the Corps of Engineers. And my role in the project has really been to help deal with one aspect of the potential environmental impacts of the project, and that's the potential cultural resource impacts. And the work for this started a little before my time. The Corps conducted a survey in 2014. It was published in 2015. And the purpose of this cultural resource survey was to identify within the project area and the surrounding area, broader than just our, where we're working, but what do we think the cultural resource concerns are in the area? What sites are known, and what new sites could be found? So there was a survey done which looked at previous research and then went into the field and walked the sites to try to identify new cultural resource sites that might be of concern. And I don't know if you're familiar with state or federal projects, you'll know that part of the compliance for federal work involves compliance with the National Historic Preservation Act. So that's a major driver for us. The state Chapter 6E cultural resource laws are also in effect for this project. And cultural resource concerns are also considered under the National Environmental Policy Act more generally. So there are a lot of legal drivers for considering cultural resources on these projects. So let's look at, let's see if I can, I'm not as good as Jeff is with this format, but I'll try to get to the next slide just so we can actually look at a map. There we go. So the map that you're looking at, hopefully you can see it well enough, shows largely the results of the survey work and where we've identified things of concern. You can see that the map shows a very large area. Most of what you're looking at is not even remotely within our project area, but we like to cast a wide net just for predictive purposes. Things that are in the general area may also occur in our area. So we like to know what's in the surrounding area. Just so you can, the key is not on here, so I'll tell you what the blobs are. The hatched, black hatched areas are former land claim awards from the Mahele period. So those are historically of interest. Sometimes historical and cultural resources tend to be clustered with those old land claim awards. In this case, not so much. So much of the area was in agriculture, at least adjacent to our project area. It was all in commercial agriculture. So we don't expect anything really associated with the black hatched areas, but they are of interest. The red triangles are human burials. I think some of these are historic. Some of these are traditional Hawaiian. The ones along the coastline, you can see several right along the coastline. Those are all Hawaiian burials. So we know those are a concern. We knew that anyway. This just probably confirmed what we thought we already knew. That there are a lot of the ones more Mauka. I think a lot of those are more historic period burials, and they're well outside of our project area. So not really a concern. You could see, let's see if I can get the, no, I'm not going to get the pointer. So the yellow blobs along the coast and some more Mauka as well, those yellow blobs are buried cultural deposits, pre-contact Hawaiian cultural deposits. Very common in Hawaii and certainly very, very common in coastal areas where we have these nice coastal sandy deposits. And sure enough, we have them here. And these sites that you're seeing on the screen have been previously documented during previous archaeology projects for other kinds of work. And you can see a lot of it looks like it's road work. A lot of this was probably monitoring of construction or repair work, utilities work. So let's see if I can get the. Trying to get the pointer. There we go. Look at that. So as Jeff, let's see, it's very sensitive. So this, as you can see here, this is the new proposed waterway canal overflow feature that is planned right there. You can see clearly that the new feature will intersect with this known archaeological site right here. This yellow one. I'll use my other hand. No. Oh, I'm going to need Jeff's help on this one. All right. I hit the wrong button. I think I just... There we go. Thank you, sir. Laser pointer. Yeah, right there. Actually, you can leave it right there. So right where Jeff's put the laser pointer, that is our site 0545. It's got a long designation, but 0545 is what we kind of refer to it as. You can see the length of that site. You can see it a little further down. There's another long site that goes along the highway. It will be, for this project, it will be, I believe, as far as I've seen from all the design iterations, it will be impossible to not intersect with this site. So it is a cultural resource, an archaeological site that we need to deal with, because we will have a negative impact on that site one way or another. And the negative impact will be associated with installation and construction of the culverts right at Kamehameha Highway, right where it intersects. You can see just north of the new channel, there are two red triangles. Those are previously discovered traditional Hawaiian burials that were discovered there. I believe both of those were moved. They weren't not left in place. They were reinterred somewhere else. But that gives us a heads up that we may very well encounter those during the project as well. So that's another very, very serious concern. And that's our, as far as the survey work, that's the major cultural resource concern that we've identified. We are in active consultation with the State Historic Preservation Division, who may be on the call. I'm not sure. We need to find a way to somehow mitigate our adverse effect on this site, because it is a fairly unavoidable impact. There are ways to do this. What we think will be the most likely path for mitigation for a site of this nature is to do data recovery research on the site. A lot of the importance of the site, aside from the cultural importance, is the archaeological scientific importance and what we think we can learn about Hawaiian culture by doing archaeological research on these kinds of deposits. So by doing the archaeological research and doing a data recovery operation, we think we can capture the information value and maybe learn something about Hawaiian occupation in this area, and at the same time allow the project to go forward. That's in most cases, that is how these types of sites are mitigated, and that is what we're working with the Historic Preservation Division to kind of craft a solution along those lines. And that will also involve Native Hawaiian organizations, the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, the Ko'olauloa Hawaiian Civic Club, and any other interested groups that want to be involved in that process will of course also be invited. So as part of this public outreach that we're doing for the cultural resources, we definitely want to also invite anybody on the call to, if you have any information about historical or cultural resources within our project area that you think we should know about, we would definitely invite you to, at any time following this meeting, I think there'll be contact information for Jeff and the team. At any time, you can bring that. We would encourage you to bring that information to us. We can't really deal with it or mitigate it or plan around it if we don't have the information. And we've done our best good faith effort to identify cultural resource concerns, but there are always things we don't know. So if you have something you think we should know, please bring it to our attention, and we'll take it very seriously. And along those same lines, if you have ideas about mitigation, or you have an opinion about the mitigation that we intend to do for this site, you can bring that to our attention too. I should also add that if we are able to mitigate the adverse effect on this archaeological deposit prior to construction, there will probably be almost certainly be an ongoing archaeological monitoring effort during construction because of the presence of known burials in this area. So even though we would do archaeological research, scientific research for the archaeology, the cultural site that is there, we can't be sure that we've got everything. And there's always the chance for Hawaiian burials. We know they're in the area. We know we may miss them, or they may be on the periphery of where we're working. So archaeological support for the project will be ongoing. It will not be simply dig up the site and then leave. I'm sure it'll be an active part of the project from beginning to end. I think I have one more slide here that I can show you. This is probably just to give you a better. I probably should have flipped this a little earlier because it shows much more clearly. I should have flipped it more. This shows the channel, and it shows where we intersect the site. Right here, right. That's where our culvert will be, and you can see there's that cultural deposit right there. That's our major concern, and that's what I wanted to mainly communicate to everyone. We're actively working on figuring out how to deal with this, and we know it has to be dealt with, and so we would appreciate any input from the community on how to deal with this site. So I think that's about all I had. Thanks, Jeff. I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, thanks, Mike. So you all have taken the last hour and 15 minutes. We've taken time from you, and now's when we'd like to hear from you and hear if you have any comments, concerns specific to cultural resources or archaeology, as Mike put forward, or to the plan. And what I will tell you is all of the comments that I received and the comments that you saw up here in our final feasibility report come September, they will all be incorporated into our public involvement meeting notes. And so, if you want to make sure that you are heard, and whether it's in support, opposition, or if you just have a question, this is your opportunity. It's not your last opportunity, but it's the last opportunity within the feasibility phase of this effort. And so what I will do is I will look, starting with the WebEx. Is it likely that excavation of the culvert Mackay of the highway will result in expansion of 0545? So I'm assuming what you're asking, and Mike can slap me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like what you're asking, as we create this project and we come across additional information or additional artifacts or additional evidence, is it going to expand that blurb or that yellow line that we saw? Because we did see, and I'm going to go back a slide for Mike to maybe refine on this. You'll see this break here. That break is likely because no one's dug there yet. And that probably, and Mike, I'll let you speak a little bit more to this, but as we create our project up here, if we identify more stuff, yes, it will likely expand on that, because likely what this is from the construction of the roadway. But Mike, is there any additional that you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I don't know if I can help with that question, but I'll try a little bit. But I think the bottom line is that the government is responsible for dealing with this site wherever our project boundaries are expected to impact it. So we wouldn't be, it's very possible that our knowledge of where this site starts and ends will improve during this project, but that will not extend outside of our project boundaries.
Right.
For the work that we have to do. And I know, I'm not sure the source of the concern, but I do know that the source of a similar concern for many other projects I've been on is that are people going to start drawing circles of Hawaiian sites on my property and have that be in the record and be something I have to deal with? And I think the answer for that is that if this project is constructed on your property and some aspect of this is excavated or dug in your project, we are responsible for recording the site and reporting that to the Historic Preservation Office and dealing with it, but only if we're building something on your property. So the bounds of what we do will be strictly delimited by the excavation that we do, the dirt we move to construct. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I appreciate that. A comment that came through was much of the area that the new diversion channel is planned to be constructed on is through the coral rock that is unlikely to have the burials. And so we appreciate that comment, and we appreciate the information. But like Mike said, the Corps of Engineers, we take this very seriously, and I will give you an example. In Nome, Alaska, and I'm from Alaska, and that's why I can specifically speak to this example. In 2006, they were doing an expansion of the Port of Nome Harbor, and as they were constructing, they found what they thought was originally a town found by the gold rush. It was settled by the gold rush, and potentially it was nomadic travelers before that. But as they were constructing the Port of Nome expansion, they came across an entire village site that rewrote the history books for the community of Nome and the Alaska Native community along the Seward Peninsula in Alaska. So we absolutely take it seriously. And what's going to happen is we will provide an active archaeological monitor out there to ensure that anything that we come across is given proper diligence. Okay, I'm going to look for some other questions. Since the highway was built, hasn't it already been disturbed by highway construction? And Mike, you can confirm this, but in all likelihood, because of the way that burial, much of that burial was probably discovered during construction of the Kamehameha Highway.
Could have been utility work.
Or it could have been utility work.
Sides, yeah. It's very general, the blobs and dots.
Okay. Yeah. So to your point, to the individual that made the comment, you're absolutely correct that it was discovered because of construction in the area, and it's been disturbed. Okay, let me look up here at my other chat window and see if we have anything coming in from Yeah, okay. Great question. I ramble a lot. My kids tell me that all the time. Your proposed schedule is very detailed. Can you give us a sort of a simplified range of potential schedule to simplify? So yeah, absolutely. Let's go ahead and say best case scenario, most optimistic, because I am an optimist. Spring of 2021, we start design. Spring of 2022, we finish design and we're ready to move out with construction. So then you have to go through the contract award process, which it's not as simple as going out and saying, hey, you get it. There's a long and detailed process to make sure that we follow federal acquisition regulations. So we're going to say 6 months to get the actual contract awarded. So let's say fall of 2021 is when we're ready to advertise the contract. And then spring of 2022, we're ready to award the contract. So then spring of 2023, best case scenario is when you start seeing a constructed project. And then how is that project constructed? That's going to be determined. And what is the phasing of that construction? That'll be determined in that design phase. And we'll coordinate that with the community, because if you live out there, which you do, you know that any road work along the Kamehameha Highway out there impacts that entire area, from tourism to travel to commuters. And depending as to which way, if you have to come into Honolulu, which way you go. So absolutely, you'll be hearing from us to determine what is the best way to construct it. So I'm not seeing any new questions through the chat. I want to give an opportunity before we close things up, and maybe I can get the Laie Community Association one more opportunity to say a few words. But is there anybody on the phone who would like to make a comment or ask a question? And if you're speaking and we don't hear you, try *6 to unmute yourself. Okay, not hearing anything. I do want to reach back out and see if Laie Community Association was able to join us, and if they have any thoughts or questions on how either Laie Community Association wants to support the execution, or how we as the Corps of Engineers can support the community in executing this project or other projects that you all have identified. Is there anyone from Laie Community Association? Okay, hearing nothing, what I want to do is tell you that this isn't the end of the conversation. You hopefully received an email from me yesterday, and this video will be out on our public website and available on YouTube. These slides will be made available on our public website. And what I will do is I will update these slides to make sure that my contact information is on them in the event that you didn't receive the email from me yesterday. But what's going to happen is the next email you receive from me is that we've completed the federal NEPA process, and that we've completed the federal feasibility study, and that we're presenting it to our higher headquarters and they've approved it. This document, this study, is also intended to meet and comply with Hawaii Revised Statute Chapter 343, which covers the Hawaii Environmental Protection Act, or HIEPA, you may have heard it, or HEPA, depending as to who you talk to. And so that will be a follow-on effort after the federal document is complete. We'll coordinate with the city and county of Honolulu so that they can do what they need to do in order to make sure that it complies with that HEPA or HIEPA requirement in HRS 343. It's not often that I finish early, but it's 7:55 now. I want to thank, again, the community out there. I've been out there a few times. There's some of you I've tried to meet and haven't had an opportunity to meet yet, and I apologize for that. But again, I'm not going anywhere, and hopefully neither is this project, or actually hopefully it's moving forward, not backwards. So I'll be out there again. And so once we figure out what the new normal looks like, I look forward to meeting all of you in person and presenting to you again in person. And I will, yes, to the individual who asked, can we get the slides? Absolutely. What's going to happen is I'll update the slides. I'll email them out to the distro list, and we'll put them on the website. But in the meantime, I ask that you have patience as we go through our process and over the next few months. And then understand that, and many of you have experienced this, the federal government doesn't move like a speedboat. We have processes that we have to go through, and we take our processes very seriously because that's how we make sure that we stay within federal law, but also do due diligence to the federal taxpayers who pay us. So I appreciate your patience, and I look forward to meeting you all again. With that, that concludes this evening's presentation, and I'm going to go ahead and terminate the video, and I'm going to go ahead and mute my microphone, and I look forward to hearing from all of you again. Thank you. Good night.